Margaret stood at the altar in her ivory gown, her heart full of hope. At 52, she had finally found love again. Her son Daniel stood beside her father, both wearing matching skeptical expressions that made her stomach twist with an ease. She had met Robert 6 months ago at a community center fundraiser. He was quiet, humble, worked as a maintenance supervisor. They bonded over late-night coffee and shared stories of loss. Margaret's first husband had passed away when Daniel was just 10. She had spent 20 years pouring everything into raising her son, building her small catering business, and now, finally, she felt ready to open her heart again. Robert seemed perfect, patient, kind, a little awkward, maybe, but genuine. Or so she thought. The reception hall glowed with candlelight. 400 guests filled the space, friends from the neighborhood, her catering clients, Daniel's colleagues. Margaret felt overwhelmed by the love surrounding her, even as she noticed Daniel whispering intensely to her father in the corner. Then it happened. Daniel stepped up to the microphone during the toasts. Margaret smiled, expecting the usual sentimental words. Instead, her son's voice cut through the warm atmosphere like ice. "I'd like to say a few words about the groom," Daniel began, his jaw tight. "Robert here told us he works maintenance. Told my mother he drives a 15-year-old truck because he believes in living simply." Margaret's smile faltered. Robert shifted uncomfortably beside her. "But that's interesting," Daniel continued, his voice rising, "because a stepfather. Really? This man is a loser who couldn't even tell my mother the truth about who he is." The room erupted in laughter. Margaret's father joined in, slapping his knee. Her aunts, her cousins, everyone seemed to find it hilarious. Heat flooded Margaret's face. She reached for Robert's hand, but he pulled away, staring at the floor. "Daniel, stop this," Margaret said quietly, but her voice was lost in the noise. "The truth is," Daniel shouted over the laughter, "this humble maintenance man is." Before he could finish, the doors burst open. 10 men in sharp black suits entered the hall with military precision. The laughter died instantly. These weren't ordinary guests. They moved with purpose, with authority, their eyes scanning the room with practiced vigilance. The lead man, broad-shouldered with silver hair, walked directly to Robert. "Sir," he said, his voice respectful but urgent, "we have a situation. Your presence is required immediately." Margaret stared at Robert, confusion flooding through her. "What's happening?" Robert stood slowly. His entire demeanor changed. The awkward, gentle man she knew seemed to straighten, to grow somehow more commanding. He looked at the lead security officer and nodded once, then turned to the crowd. "Everyone needs to leave," Robert said quietly. His voice, though soft, carried complete authority. Now, no one moved at first. Then the security team began professionally clearing the room. Within minutes, 400 confused guests were filing out, including Margaret's laughing relatives who suddenly looked very uncertain. Daniel stood frozen at the microphone, his face pale. Margaret's father approached slowly. "Robert," he said carefully, "what's going on?" Robert finally looked at Margaret. In his eyes, she saw sorrow, regret, and something else. Something she'd never seen before. Fear, perhaps. Or maybe just profound weariness. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I wanted to tell you. I tried to find the right time. I just wanted to be normal for once. To be loved for who I am, not what I have." "What you have?" Margaret repeated, her voice barely a whisper. One of the security men handed Robert a phone. He glanced at it, his face darkening, then looked back at Margaret. "My name is Robert Hendricks," he said slowly. "My company, Hendricks Global, is worth approximately $43 billion. That maintenance work I do, I own the building. I own 70 buildings in this city alone. I volunteer for maintenance because it keeps me grounded, reminds me that honest work matters more than board meetings and shareholder reports." The silence in the hall was absolute. Margaret felt the floor shift beneath her. $43 billion. "I lost my wife 10 years ago," Robert continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Cancer. After that, I discovered that everyone wanted something from me. Business deals disguised as friendship. Women who saw dollar signs instead of a person. I was so tired of being a target, a prize, a means to an end. He took a step toward Margaret. She didn't move away. Then I met you, he said. You who worked 3 jobs to put your son through college. You who baked extra cookies every Christmas for the homeless shelter. You who looked at me like I mattered, not like I was useful. For the first time in a decade, I felt like myself again. Tears streamed down Margaret's face. You lied to me, I omitted, Robert said, his voice breaking. I know that's not much better, but every word of love was true. Every moment we shared was real. I was going to tell you after the honeymoon. I had it all planned. I just wanted one perfect day where I was just Robert, marrying the woman who saved me from drowning in loneliness. Daniel slowly approached, his earlier bravado completely gone. I hired a private investigator, he admitted quietly. I thought he was a con artist. I thought he was after your business, Mom. After everything you built, I was trying to protect you. Robert looked at Daniel with surprising understanding. You're a good son, he said. Protective, maybe too protective, but I respect that. Your mother raised you right. This situation, Margaret said, finding her voice. What situation requires you to clear out our wedding? Robert hesitated, then sighed. There's been a development. A merger I've been working on for 2 years just fell through spectacularly. It's going to make international news within the hour. My legal team needs decisions made tonight. Millions of dollars and thousands of jobs hang in the balance. He looked at her with such raw vulnerability that Margaret's anger began to soften. I understand if you want an annulment, Robert said softly. I understand if you can't forgive me for not being honest. I understand if this world I live in is too much, too complicated, too far from the simple life you deserved. Margaret stood there in her wedding gown, her makeup running, her perfect day in ruins. She thought about the past 6 months. The way Robert always insisted on paying for dinner with crumpled bills from his wallet. The way he showed up to help her cater events, washing dishes beside her until midnight. The way he listened to her dreams about expanding her business, offering thoughtful advice that she now realized came from decades of business expertise. She thought about how he held her when she cried about missing her first husband, never jealous, just present. How he played chess with Daniel even after Daniel made it clear he disapproved. How he fixed her father's porch railing without being asked and refused payment. Daniel, she said quietly, not taking her eyes off Robert, go wait in the car. Mom now. Her son left, and Margaret's father followed, leaving her alone with Robert and the security team standing at a respectful distance. I don't want an annulment, Margaret said finally. Robert's eyes widened. You don't. I want the truth from now on. All of it. No more omissions. No more protection from your complicated world. If I'm your wife, I'm your partner. Equal. Understood. A slow smile spread across Robert's face, the first genuine one since the security team arrived. Understood. And Robert, yes, you're still doing the dishes, he laughed, a sound of pure relief, and pulled her into his arms. Over his shoulder, Margaret could see the security team trying to hide their smiles. We have to go, Robert murmured into her hair. But after tonight, I promise you a real honeymoon. 2 weeks. No phones, no business, no interruptions. 3 weeks. Margaret countered. Deal. As they walked toward the waiting cars, Margaret felt something unexpected. Not anger at the deception, not fear of this new world she was entering, but excitement. After 20 years of playing it safe, of protecting herself and her son, she was stepping into something unknown, and this time, she wasn't alone. 6 months later, Margaret still ran her catering business, but now she also sat on the board of the Hendricks Foundation, directing millions toward small business grants and youth programs. Daniel, humbled by his mistake, had apologized publicly and now worked alongside his stepfather, learning that true wealth meant lifting others up. Sometimes, late at night, Robert still did maintenance work in one of his buildings, and Margaret, always went with him, because that's where they met their truest selves. In the quiet work, in the simple moments, in the space between who the world thought they should be and who they really were, love, Margaret learned, isn't about perfection. It's about seeing someone fully, flaws and fortunes included, and choosing them anyway. Every single day. That's the real fairy tale.